He bought 200 acres for $2,000. The realtor handed him the keys like she was passing him a loaded weapon. Garrett Whitfield stood at the rusted gate, staring at fresh tire tracks and dirt that should have been untouched for months. Smoke rose from the chimney of the supposedly abandoned farmhouse. His hand moved instinctively toward where his sidearm used to be. 3 tours in Afghanistan had taught him to trust his instincts. And right now, every nerve screamed danger. This was supposed to be his fresh start, his escape from the nightmares. The VA counselor said isolation would help. She didn't mention isolation could already be occupied. Laundry fluttered on a line behind the house. Tomatoes grew in neat rows. Chickens clucked in a makeshift coop. Rusted ventilation pipes jutted from the ground near the house, and a faded explosive storage stencil was barely visible on a shed door. Someone lived here, someone who knew he was coming. The front door opened before he reached the porch. 4 women stepped out, and none looked surprised to see him. The first had dark hair and work-worn jeans. Behind her, a blonde with a scar running from ear to jaw. The third was Asian, barely out of her teens, gripping a kitchen knife. The fourth, Latina, positioned herself like she'd rather fight than talk. "You must be the new owner," the dark-haired woman said. Her voice carried authority and an accent he couldn't place. "We've been expecting you." Garrett's mouth went dry. "Expecting me? Someone always comes eventually." The blonde stepped forward. "Question is, what do you plan to do about us?" The Asian girl whispered something urgent. Whatever she said made the leader's expression harden. "Before you decide," the dark-haired woman continued, "you should know something about this land. About why your deed only cost $2,000. She glanced at the others. And about why the last 3 buyers never stayed more than a week. Garrett studied their faces. These weren't squatters. These were survivors. What happened to the previous owners? They learned the truth about what they'd actually purchased. The blonde's hand moved to her back pocket. They learned what comes with this property. Which is? The leader smiled. But there was no warmth in it. Us, and everyone who's looking for us. In the distance, dust clouds marked a vehicle approaching fast on the dirt road. All 4 women tensed simultaneously, their casual demeanor vanishing. "Is that normal?" Garrett asked. "Nothing about this place is normal," the Asian girl whispered. The dark-haired woman never took her eyes off the approaching dust cloud. "Mr. Whitfield, you need to make a choice right now. Walk away and pretend you never saw us, or stay and learn why 4 women would rather die than leave this land." The vehicle was getting closer, close enough to see it was black and expensive, moving with purpose rather than curiosity. "What aren't you telling me?" "Everything," she replied. "But if you stay, you'll wish we hadn't." The black SUV slowed as it approached the gate, and Garrett realized his peaceful retirement had just become something else entirely. The SUV stopped 50 yards from the gate, engine running. Through tinted windows, Garrett counted at least 2 figures. They weren't getting out. They were watching. Inside, now. The dark-haired woman's voice cut through the tension. The other 3 moved immediately toward the house, but Garrett remained frozen, staring at the vehicle. "This is my property," he said, "and we're the reason they're here." The blonde grabbed his arm with surprising strength. "You want to meet them alone? Fine. But understand that once they see your face, you're part of this." Inside the farmhouse, the women transformed. The leader pulled a rifle from behind a bookshelf while the Latina secured the back door. The Asian girl closed curtains with practiced efficiency, and the blonde positioned herself at a window. A geological survey map hung on Patterson's wall, marking several sealed mining adits across the property. "How often does this happen?" Garrett asked. "First time they've come this close." The leader checked her weapon with military precision. "Usually they just drive by." Through the window, Garrett watched the SUV's occupants step out. One wore an expensive suit despite the desert heat. The other moved like hired muscle, his jacket bulging over a shoulder holster. "They're not coming to the house," the Asian girl observed. "They're walking the fence line." The leader cursed under her breath. "Checking our defenses, looking for weak points." "Who are you people?" Garrett demanded. "We're ghosts," the blonde replied, without taking her eyes off the window. 4 women who don't exist on paper anymore. No credit cards, no social security numbers in use, no digital footprint. Ghosts don't need rifles. They do when the people hunting them have unlimited resources. The leader's knuckles were white around her weapon. When they have patience and money and connections that reach everywhere. The men outside completed their circuit and returned to their vehicle, but instead of leaving, They parked across the road, waiting. "My name's Elena," the leader said suddenly. "That's Rose, Lily, and Maria. We've been here 4 years, 3 years, 2 years, and 3 years respectively. We grow our own food, fix our own problems, and trust no one." "What did you do?" "We ran," Maria spoke for the first time, her accent slight but noticeable. "We ran from people who think they own human beings." Rose turned from the window. "The previous owner died 3 months ago. Heart attack. His son wanted us gone, but couldn't legally evict squatters he'd never reported. So he sold fast and cheap to someone who'd either run or call the sheriff. You think I'll run?" "Everyone runs," Lily said quietly. "When they realize what staying means." Elena moved to another window. "Those men out there? They work for people who don't forgive and don't forget. People who view us as stolen property." Garrett felt pieces clicking into place. "You're not just hiding, you're being hunted. For 4 years, every few months they get close. We disappear deeper, cover our tracks better. But they never stop looking. Why not go to the police?" The silence that followed was answer enough. "Because some of the people looking for us wear badges," Rose said finally. "Because some of them sit in government offices. Because when you're property instead of people, the law doesn't protect you." Outside, the SUV's headlights flicked on and off 3 times, some kind of signal. Elena's face went pale. "That's new. What does it mean?" "It means they're not just watching anymore." Maria backed away from her window. "It means tonight they're coming inside." 2 more vehicles appeared on the horizon, approaching fast through the gathering dusk. The new vehicles moved in formation, headlights cutting through the dust like predatory eyes. Elena backed away from the window, her rifle ready but her face grim. "How many people are we talking about?" Garrett asked. "Enough." Rose moved to a different window. "They travel in teams of 6, 2 per vehicle, plus backup." Lily pressed herself against the wall near the back door. "They're professionals. Ex-military, ex-police. People who know how to hurt without killing unless they want to." "What do they want with you?" Elena's jaw tightened. "We're merchandise that walked away from a very expensive operation. Human trafficking ring that spans 3 states, with clients who pay premium prices for specific types of women." Garrett felt his stomach drop. "You were trafficked. We were sold," Maria corrected. "Bought and paid for by men who thought they owned us completely. We weren't supposed to have names or thoughts or the ability to run." The vehicles stopped in a line across the road, engines running. Through the windows, Garrett could see figures moving between the cars, organizing. "How did you escape?" "Elena first," Rose said. "She killed her handler during transport and disappeared into the desert. Found this place, started building defenses." Elena never took her eyes off the vehicles. Rose came 6 months later, jumped from a moving car during a client transfer. Lily broke free when they tried to move her to a new location. Maria fought her way out of a compound in Nevada. "And you all ended up here?" "Word spreads in certain circles," Lily said quietly, "about a place where women can disappear, where someone fights back instead of running forever." Garrett looked around the house with new understanding. The reinforced windows, the clear sight lines, the weapons cache. This wasn't just a hiding place. It was a fortress built by survivors. "The previous owners," he said. "They really just left?" "First one lasted 4 days," Maria replied. "Saw the surveillance, packed up in the middle of the night. Second one tried to negotiate with them, thinking he could make a deal." "What happened?" "They made it clear that harboring stolen property carries consequences," Elena said. "He left the next morning. Outside, men were taking positions around the perimeter, professional movements, coordinated timing. These weren't random criminals. They were soldiers." "Third owner came last month," Rose continued. "Stayed exactly 1 week, left everything behind, including his truck." Garrett felt a chill. What changed his mind? Elena met his eyes. "They showed him photos. What happens to people who interfere with their business? What happens to their families?" The men outside had finished their positioning. Now they waited, like hunters who had cornered their prey. "So why am I here?" Garrett asked. "Why sell to someone new when they could just take you?" Elena and the others exchanged glances. "Because they're tired of waiting," Elena said finally. "Because 4 years is long enough. Because they want this finished cleanly, with legal cover." "Legal cover?" "Think about it," Rose said. "New property owner discovers dangerous fugitives on his land. Calls for help. Authorities respond. 4 wanted criminals resist arrest and get killed in the shootout." Lily's voice was barely a whisper. No questions asked, no investigation needed, just 4 dead problems. Garrett stared at them as the pieces fell into place. You think they arranged the sale? They wanted someone desperate enough to buy questionable property. Someone isolated, Maria added. Someone with no family to ask questions if things went wrong. Someone exactly like you, Elena finished. Outside, Garrett's phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number. All 4 women went silent as he read it aloud. Mr. Whitfield, time to collect our property. Come outside alone and we can discuss compensation for your inconvenience. You have 5 minutes. Elena grabbed Garrett's phone before he could respond. Don't even think about it. The moment you step outside, you're dead. They'll make it look like you caught us breaking in and we killed you in self-defense. How do you know? Because that's what happened to the realtor who sold you this place, Rose said quietly. She started asking too many questions about who was funding the quick sale. They found her car in a ditch last week. Garrett felt the blood drain from his face. The nervous woman who handed me the keys? Sandra Morrison, 23 years in real estate, survived by 2 teenage kids who now think their mother died in an accident. Maria peered through a gap in the curtains. They're moving closer, setting up a perimeter. Lily counted under her breath. 8 men total, 2 staying with the vehicles, 6 advancing on foot. Professional formation, Elena observed. They've done this before. Garrett studied each woman's face. Despite the fear, they moved with practiced efficiency. These weren't victims anymore. They were soldiers who had learned to fight back. What's the plan? He asked. Plan? Rose laughed bitterly. The plan is to make them pay for every inch, make enough noise that someone might investigate later. That's not a plan. That's suicide. Sometimes suicide is the only choice left, Elena replied. Better to die fighting than go back to being property. Garrett looked around the house again. Reinforced positions, clear fields of fire, stockpiled ammunition, but 8 trained men with superior weapons and no rules of engagement. His phone buzzed again. Another text. 4 minutes, Mr. Whitfield. Our patience has limits. They're not going to wait, Maria said. Good, Elena replied, chambering around. Neither are we. But Garrett was thinking about something else. The sale price, the rushed paperwork, the realtor's nervous demeanor. Wait, Elena, you said they arranged this sale. How long have they been planning it? Weeks, maybe months. Why? Because I didn't find this property. It found me. Garrett pulled out his phone and scrolled through his messages. Look at this. Email from the realtor 3 weeks ago. Perfect property for veteran seeking isolation. Motivated seller, cash only, immediate possession. Elena frowned. So? I never contacted any realtor. I never said I was looking for property in this area. He showed them the email chain. Someone researched me, found out about my discharge, my PTSD, my isolation preferences. They targeted me specifically. Rose grabbed the phone, reading quickly. They wanted someone with military training. Someone who could handle himself in a firefight, Lily added. Someone who might actually put up enough resistance to make their story believable, Maria finished. Elena's face went pale. They don't just want us dead. They want a war. Something messy enough to justify calling in federal backup. Something that ends with everyone dead and no witnesses. Outside, boots crunched on gravel. The men were moving into final positions. Garrett felt something shift inside him. The same feeling he'd had overseas when civilians were caught in crossfire. The need to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. New plan, he said, moving away from the windows. What are you doing? Elena asked. Something they didn't plan for. Garrett headed toward the back of the house. They researched me, but they missed something important. Which is, I didn't survive 3 tours by playing defense. He opened the back door and looked out at the desert landscape beyond. I survived by taking the fight to them. Rose followed him. That's insane. They have superior numbers and position. They have superior numbers and position at the front of the house, Garrett corrected, where they expect us to make our stand. But there's something else this land has that they didn't account for. What? 200 acres of desert terrain that I now own, including mineral rights that extend deep underground. He pointed toward the horizon, including old mining tunnels that connect to 3 different exit points. Elena stared at him. How do you know about mining tunnels? Because that's why this land was really worth buying, and why they needed it sold quickly before anyone did a proper geological survey. Outside, his phone buzzed one final time. Time's up. Glass shattered at the front of the house. Elena spun toward the sound. Rifle raised, but Garrett was already moving toward the back door. "The tunnels," he said. "Where's the entrance?" "You're serious about that?" Rose asked, following him. "Dead serious. This land has been mined for copper since the 1920s. The survey I saw before buying mentioned sealed entrances, but sealed doesn't mean blocked." Lily grabbed a backpack from behind a cabinet. "There's an old shaft about 50 yards behind the chicken coop. We explored it once, but never went deep." "How deep does it go?" "Deep enough to disappear," Maria said, stuffing ammunition into her pockets. "But we don't know where it leads." A voice called from outside, amplified by a megaphone. "Ladies, time to come home. Mr. Whitfield, step outside and this ends peacefully." Elena cursed. "They want us to think he's in charge, want us to believe they'll let him live if we surrender." "Will they?" Garrett asked. "Not a chance. He's seen too much." Another window broke, this time at the side of the house. Heavy boots stomped across the front porch. "They're coming in," Rose whispered. Garrett moved to the back door and peered out. The chicken coop sat 50 yards away, surrounded by open ground. Between them and the coop lay nothing but dirt and sparse brush. No cover. "We'll be sitting ducks crossing that space." "Better than sitting ducks in here," Elena replied. "At least out there we can run." Lily shouldered her backpack. "There's another way, through the root cellar. It connects to an old storm drain that leads toward the mining area." "Show me." She led them to a trapdoor hidden beneath a throw rug in the kitchen. The cellar below was dark and cramped, but Garrett could see it extended further than the house's foundation. "Patterson used this during tornado season," Lily explained, dropping into the darkness. "But we found it connects to older structures." They dropped down one by one. The cellar was humid and smelled of earth and metal. Lily led them through a narrow passage that curved away from the house. Above them, boots thundered across the floor. Voices shouted orders. The systematic search had begun. "How far?" Garrett whispered. 200 yards. The passage opens near an old equipment shed by the mining entrance." They crawled through darkness, guided only by Lily's whispered directions. Behind them, the sounds of the house being torn apart grew fainter but more violent. "They're not being careful," Maria observed. "They're angry." "Good," Elena said. "Angry people make mistakes." The passage began to slope upward. Ahead, Garrett could see faint light filtering through cracks in what looked like wooden boards. "That's the shed," Lily said. "The mining entrance is right behind it." They emerged into moonlight beside a rusted structure that had once housed mining equipment. The entrance to the old shaft yawned open 20 feet away, partially covered by rotting boards and rusted metal grating. "Think it's stable?" Rose asked. Garrett tested the boards. They were old but solid. Only one way to find out. Behind them, light swept across the house. Shouts echoed in the night air. They had maybe minutes before the search expanded to the outbuildings. "Once we go down there." "We're committed," Elena said. "No going back." Garrett looked at each woman. 4 survivors who had already risked everything to escape hell once. Now they were being asked to trust their lives to abandoned mining tunnels and a stranger they'd met hours ago. "Together or not at all," he said. One by one they disappeared into the darkness below ground, leaving the world above to men with guns and badges who would never stop hunting them. The tunnel was wider than Garrett expected, but lower than comfortable. They moved single file through darkness, using phone flashlights sparingly to preserve battery life. The air smelled of copper and decades-old dust. "How far do these go?" he whispered. "We never found the end," Lily replied from behind him. "But there are multiple branches. Some go deeper, some lead to other shafts." Elena, leading the group, stopped suddenly. "Listen." Above them, muffled voices echoed through the earth. Footsteps. The searchers had found the shed. "They'll discover the entrance," Maria said. "Not necessarily," Rose replied. "It looks abandoned. They might assume we headed for the main road." They continued deeper, the tunnel sloping downward at a steady angle. The walls showed tool marks from decades past, and occasional wooden support beams crossed overhead. Some were solid, others sagged ominously. "This section feels unstable," Garrett observed, testing a beam that creaked under slight pressure. "The whole mountain is unstable," Elena said. "That's why they stopped mining here in the 50s. Too many cave-ins." As if summoned by her words, dirt trickled from the ceiling ahead. A low groaning sound echoed through the darkness. "We need to move faster," Lily urged. They hurried through the questionable section, emerging into a wider chamber where multiple tunnels branched off in different directions. Elena's flashlight revealed old mining equipment abandoned where workers had left it. Rusted carts, broken tools, coils of rotted rope. Which way? Garrett asked. That one leads back toward town. Elena pointed left. That one goes deeper into the mountain. The middle one, we've never explored. Behind them, a new sound echoed through the tunnel they'd just traversed. Voices, footsteps. Their pursuers had found the entrance. They're coming, Rose whispered. How many? Elena listened carefully. At least 3, maybe 4. Garrett studied the 3 tunnel options. Town meant civilization but also meant potential roadblocks and backup units. Deeper into the mountain meant unknown dangers but better concealment. The unexplored middle tunnel was a complete gamble. What's your gut tell you about the middle path? He asked Elena. Patterson mentioned it once. Said it connected to the old railway line that used to service the mines. But that railway's been abandoned for 40 years. Railways don't disappear. They get overgrown. And abandoned railways lead to abandoned stations, Maria added. Places where people might have left vehicles. The voices behind them grew louder. Definitely closer. Middle tunnel, Garrett decided. If we're lucky, it leads to transportation. If we're unlucky, we're no worse off than the other options. They plunged into the unknown passage. This tunnel was different from the others, wider and more carefully constructed. The walls showed signs of regular maintenance that ended abruptly, as if work had stopped mid-project. This feels newer, Lily observed. Because it is newer, Elena said, studying the walls. This isn't mining infrastructure. This is something else. Garrett ran his hand along the smooth concrete walls. This is professional-grade construction. Military or government standard. What would the government want with abandoned mining tunnels? Before anyone could answer, they heard it. The unmistakable sound of engines starting above ground. Not cars. Helicopters. They called in air support, Rose said. Elena's face went pale in the flashlight beam. This isn't just about recovering stolen property anymore. This is a federal operation. Which means we're not just running from traffickers. We're running from people with government authorization and unlimited resources. The tunnel ahead curved sharply to the right. Emergency communication panels and fiber optic cables ran along the tunnel ceiling. As they rounded the corner, Garrett's flashlight illuminated something that made them all stop dead. A steel door. Modern, secure, with electronic locks and warning signs. And beneath the accumulated dust and corrosion, the unmistakable seal of the United States government. What the hell is this place? Maria whispered. Garrett studied the door, his military training kicking in. This is a government facility. Hidden, classified, and supposedly abandoned. But why hide it in old mining tunnels? Elena moved closer to examine the warnings on the door. Because sometimes the government needs places that don't officially exist. Places where people can disappear without questions. Above them, the helicopter rotors grew louder, joined by the sound of vehicles arriving in large numbers. Elena studied the government seal on the steel door. This explains everything. Why the land was sold so cheap. Why they needed a specific type of buyer. I don't understand, Lily said. Garrett ran his fingers along the door frame, finding hidden sensors and security panels. This is a federal witness protection facility. Underground, off the books, designed to hide people who need to disappear completely. But it's abandoned, Maria observed. Not abandoned. Decommissioned. Rose pointed to a date stamped on the warning sign. Closed 18 months ago due to budget cuts. Elena's eyes widened with understanding. The trafficking ring we escaped from. They weren't just selling women. They were selling information about federal witnesses, location data, new identities, protection details. Someone in the government was feeding them intelligence, Garrett realized. And when this facility closed, they needed the land to stay secret. They needed an owner who wouldn't ask questions or explore too deeply. Above them, the helicopter sounds intensified. Voices echoed down the tunnel behind them, getting closer. They're in the tunnels, Maria whispered. Garrett examined the electronic lock on the federal door. Military grade, but old technology. The kind of system he'd worked with overseas. I can bypass this, but we need time. How much time? 5 minutes, maybe 10. Elena checked her rifle. We don't have 10 minutes. The voices behind them grew distinct. At least 4 men, moving fast through the tunnels with professional coordination. There's another option, Lily said quietly. We don't have to run anymore. What do you mean? We make a stand, here, now, Force them to explain why federal agents are helping human traffickers recover stolen property. Rose looked at her like she'd lost her mind. They'll kill us. Maybe, but not quietly. Not without explanations. Not with a government facility as the backdrop. Garrett understood. She's right. They can't just execute us next to a classified federal installation. Too many questions. Too much exposure. Elena considered this. What are you suggesting? We document everything. Live stream it. Make it impossible for them to cover up. Maria pulled out her phone. No signal down here. The federal facility will have communication equipment, emergency broadcasts, distress beacons, systems designed to reach the surface even from underground. The voices were getting closer. Maybe 2 minutes before contact. Garrett worked frantically on the door lock, using techniques learned in classified operations. The old system was vulnerable to the right kind of interference. Got it, he said, as the lock disengaged with a heavy click. They pushed through into a sterile corridor lined with dormant equipment. Emergency lighting flickered on automatically, revealing a facility that looked like it had been evacuated in a hurry. Communication center, Elena pointed down the hall. They found it quickly. Banks of equipment, most powered down but some still functional. Garrett activated the emergency broadcast system, while Elena set up her phone to record. This is Garrett Whitfield, property owner at coordinates 34.7 north, 106.2 west. I'm documenting a federal crime in progress involving human trafficking and government corruption. Behind them, boots echoed in the tunnel. Their pursuers had reached the government door. 4 women who escaped human trafficking are being hunted by federal agents working with their former captors. The evidence is in this classified facility, which was used to hide witnesses who were then sold to traffickers. The door burst open. 6 men in tactical gear poured through, weapons drawn. But they stopped when they saw the recording equipment and active communication systems. Sir, you need to stop that broadcast immediately, the lead agent said. Why? Because it's exposing your operation? Elena stepped forward, rifle lowered but ready. Agent Morrison, I remember you from Nevada. You were there when they moved us to the Arizona facility. The agent's face went pale. You're mistaken. No mistake. You sold us out then, and you're here to clean up loose ends now. The standoff stretched taut. 6 federal agents with weapons drawn, 4 survivors with nothing left to lose, and a broadcast system carrying everything live to emergency frequencies across 3 states. This ends now, Garrett said into the microphone. Either with arrests of the real criminals or with the exposure of the biggest government scandal in decades. Agent Morrison's hand twitched toward his weapon, but the sound of approaching helicopters made him freeze. Not his helicopters. Different engines, different approach patterns. Those are news choppers, Garrett said, monitoring the communication frequencies. Your broadcast triggered automatic alerts to every major network in the region. Elena smiled grimly. Hard to cover up federal corruption when it's being filmed from 6 different angles. You don't understand the scope of what you're interfering with, Morrison said desperately. I understand perfectly, Garrett replied. You've been selling witness locations to organized crime, using classified facilities as bait, profiting from human misery. Through the facility's external cameras, they could see vehicles arriving above ground. FBI units, state police, federal marshals. The legitimate authorities were finally responding. Morrison's team lowered their weapons as they realized their position was hopeless. The evidence was overwhelming. The exposure complete, and backup wasn't coming. This is over, Elena said, keeping her rifle trained on Morrison. 4 years of running, 4 years of hiding. Today, we stop running. Garrett looked at the 4 women who had transformed from victims into survivors, from hunted into hunters. What happens now? Now we make sure this never happens to anyone else, Elena replied. As federal agents flooded the facility to arrest Morrison's team, Garrett understood he hadn't just bought 200 acres for $2,000. He had bought 4 women their freedom, and in return, they had given him something he'd lost overseas. A purpose worth fighting for. 6 months later, the property became a federally protected sanctuary where Garrett and the 4 women helped dozens of others find the safety and purpose they had discovered together. If you enjoyed this story, click the video on your screen now to watch another unforgettable Western tale, where courage and destiny collide in unexpected ways. Don't forget to subscribe and consider a super chat to help us keep bringing you more incredible stories like these. Your support means everything to us.